can you tell us when your stroke was, how old you were at the time, and specifically what kind of stroke you had?
Yes, I was 51. I don't know if you can see from the video. I'm actually fairly slender. I was in excellent condition. I didn't have any of the precursors, no diabetes, no high blood pressure, no whatever.
Mhm.
It was a primarily right side ischemic and, oh, for heaven's sake, what's the word for the blood clot kind of stroke?
Yeah, ischemic stroke.
Okay, there was that. There was the blood clot, but there's two kinds of stroke. There's a blood clot and lack of blood.
So there's hemorrhagic and ischemic.
Yes, hemorrhagic. So I had a profound hemorrhagic stroke in my cerebellum on the right side, 70% of which is dead. And then I had it looks like two small spiders basically on the top of my right cerebrum. And that's what I had. I went to the ER and met with an ER doctor who actually did not know what a stroke was. Although I told him at the time, I think there's something very wrong with my brain. Apparently, that was not enough to clue him in that there might be a brain issue. But anyway, it doesn't matter. I don't even know if that drug TPA or whatever it was would have helped anyway. I was airlifted to Avera McKennan Hospital in Sioux Falls, where there was luckily somebody who was there from Walter Reed, who did a brain surgery on me and removed, I guess, some clots from my cerebellum, and here I am.
Wow. Okay. So if you had a blood clot, so did you have a mix of ischemic and hemorrhagic?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll have to go through and review your medical records. Thank you for sending that Dropbox, by the way. I was gonna dig into
Well,
that.
I sent what there was, and I'm also very willing to send a consent. I have never found the CDs, which I can't look at anyway, but I'm quite sure that, being a doctor, you'll be able to see that, and I think you'll probably be as alarmed as the people around here were when they saw it.
Yeah. Okay. So you can't find the CDs?
No,
Okay. That's okay. Thanks for
I can't
letting me know.
find much, unfortunately. I was always bad at it, but it's another gift of having this that I have even more difficulty finding things now than I used to.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, thanks for looking. So can you describe for me the moment, you realized that you were having a stroke? What were you doing? What was going through your mind?
Well, I don't really know exactly because I don't have a recollection of this. On that day, which
Oh,
was January 26th of 2022, I can see that I stopped emailing at some point, and I guess later on, my husband came into the house and found me in our home office, and I was on my knees mumbling and vomiting. Um,
and you don't remember any of this?
I don't remember any of this at all. And that is when he drove me to the ER, and that's where we unfortunately met with a doctor who was unfamiliar with the stroke. And it's not that hard. I really want you in your medical article to just stress, look, if you don't know what a stroke is, you shouldn't be a doctor.
Hmm.
You sure shouldn't take on an ER, but I mean, it's just, I'm an attorney and we have to know what that is. If someone tells you there's something wrong with their brain, probably is. I
Wow.
mean, even my vet knew, and her patients don't tell her stuff.
Well, you don't really know how long you were in your office for. I mean, you could have been there for hours before your
I could have
husband.
been there for hours before my husband came. That's true. But I have no way of knowing that. I
But you
know
know,
that I came there at a normal time, in the morning. And I know I was emailing and those emails seemed normal. So it seems like I was still me until at least afternoon. I just don't know what time afternoon.
mhm. Wow. Well, thank God you were conscious and he found you.
Well, thank God my husband is as a retired EMT.
Oh, wow.
And he knows well enough that there was something
Yeah,
incredibly wrong with me. He didn't know what it was either, but he's an EMT. That's not. He knew there was something wrong with my brain because he was listening.
sure.
Yeah.
Um, and so um, the first time we spoke on the phone, was that like maybe a week or two ago?
Mhm.
You had mentioned that due to the severity of the stroke, you felt like your medical providers just kind of gave up on your recovery. What did that feel
Absolutely.
like? Can you speak to that? And then on the flip side, did you ever feel like giving up yourself?
Every day. I feel like giving up every day. Um, I apparently when I was wheeled out of the hospital I stayed there for about 3 months. in some kind of I was in the ICU at Avera McKennan in Sioux Falls for as long as they can keep me with all the tubes down your throat. And then they told my mom if they kept them there any longer, I would actually die right there. So they took them out, and I do have spasmodic dysphonia, which can present as the voice going up and down radically. I'm so blessed. I don't have that. What I do have is it feels like my throat is plugged all the time, so I'm clearing it all the time for no reason. I know now that a lot of that is because the right side of my vocal cords is paralyzed a lot of the time. Yeah, that's not curable. I mean, there's never a hope for that. But I was told I had, apparently, as I was wheeled out of the hospital, I was verbally told that I had an appointment with a neurologist for a little while on. There are very few neurologists in this state. As a general rule, practitioners need to understand that telling somebody verbally who just had a stroke that they have an appointment with someone is not very effective.
Sorry, I didn't mean to laugh. Oh,
Well,
for the
I
video,
mean,
can you,
it's mind-boggling that they would think that was acceptable. It needs to be written down. Probably that person's caretaker should be told and told in writing, and that person should definitely have it written down. But guess what? I didn't make it to the appointment with her. Anyway, I have never been to a neurologist in South Dakota. I'll be going for the first time on Friday. But I think that it's hard to tell with a giant like Avera. They may have just like lost me in the mix, but there has been no effort on their part to see if I'm okay. None.
so you feel like you were just completely lost to follow up, essentially. It just gave you these discharge instructions despite having had a stroke. And
Yes, verbally, one time.
wow.
Yeah, which is, I think, is radically against policy. Also, you don't give a patient discharge instructions verbally once, unless they're like, I can't even imagine if someone had been hospitalized that it could be that simple. But
Oh,
I think they needed to be much more explicit. I researched a lot on the internet once I was allowed to do computers again, trying to figure out some other stuff to do. And Vera did try to provide me with physical therapy and occupational therapy. And what really worked on is gaze stabilization. I'm going to see another neurologist on Friday in 2 days. So or a neurologist, the first one. I found gaze stabilization to be completely ineffective. I still have profound vertigo. It's 3.5 years later, and it's terrible yet, just unbearable.
yeah.
It makes me feel like giving up most of the time. I'm hoping this guy may have some other suggestion, or else just say you tried the gaze stabilization too early. You need to do it again.
Yeah.
But it's frustrating because I spent tens of thousands of hours on that, and it didn't help.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm glad you're finally getting in to see a neurologist. My goodness. So,
I'm actually kind of famous there. I
yeah.
called there, and the receptionist knew exactly who I was. I don't think a lot of people have lived with 70% of half of their cerebellum dead. I think that's unusual. And as you can see, I can speak normally. I recently did a second cognitive test on April 15th, and she actually, I found from her that she was comparing me, I'm now 54, she's comparing me to other 54-year-old women who also have a doctoral degree. And I tested as above average in many skills. I'm below in a couple, but that's normal. But it just lets me know that a lot of my intelligence is still there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, it shouldn't be, but it is. So I'm very fortunate. Um, and I think it's really wrong to give up. If somebody's still there, you need to do what you can, no matter how scary it looks on an X-ray or an MRI. It's just your job.
So, wow. So, okay. So you really just did not have any care whatsoever after you left the hospital. So then, what do you feel like were the biggest physical and emotional challenges in the early days and weeks after getting home and because you'd been in there for 3 months?
Well, physically, the vertigo has always been a huge challenge, but I think I was also profoundly weakened because I was very much an outdoor person. We live on a ranch, on a farm, so it's like really physical. So I've done a lot of that. So I think I had a lot of physical challenges like with weakness and also getting older. I guess your body gets weaker. I hadn't really experienced that yet at 51, but complete inactivity is not very healthy. So I think I had some of that. And then I had like, they had to put up a door. We live in a ranch style house with a garden level basement, and a lot of stuff is downstairs. They had to put up a door blocking the stairs down to downstairs because apparently I shouldn't be going up or downstairs at that point. They moved our bedroom to the ranch house level, so I would be all on one level. I wasn't supposed to go near the stove or, things like that that could be dangerous to a baby or a very small child, because I guess they had severe concerns about my ability to do stuff. One of the things I do remember from the hospital is I had a couple of physical therapists come in and tell me how to dress myself. And I just remember how crazy that seemed. And then they taught me how to like lean against something to put on my pants. And I was just thinking, why would anybody need this? I mean, obviously, if I'm losing my balance when I'm putting on my pants or my socks, I'm going to lean on something. I don't need somebody to tell me that. And again, verbally telling me once, if I really needed that, if I really couldn't figure out how to lean against something, I don't think verbally telling me something once would be a good idea.
So I'm trying not to, I'm trying to take your words and repeat them in a different way.
I think that the people in this hospital had some difficulty with understanding stroke victims' reality.
Okay, so you just felt like they didn't get it. They just didn't get it.
They didn't get it. Yeah, because if they did, I probably would have said, look, it's totally normal for somebody like you to have to lean against something while dressing. Don't, this is not a good time to try to stand up on one foot. Just, go ahead, use to lean on something. If you want to stand on one foot, do it like while you're brushing your teeth and can just grab the counter if you need it. Something like that is just so much more respectful than just assuming I was too stupid to figure out I couldn't put on my pants like I used to. I'm actually smart enough to figure that out. And
Yeah.
my guess is that most people are.
Okay. So so it was kind of a mix of learning how to do things again. You sound like the kind of person that's really hard on yourself.
I'm extremely perfectionistic and driven,
I'm
yes.
picking that up.
But that's also part of why I'm here.
Can you speak to that? Because you mentioned that on our call.
I truly believe that one of the reasons I'm still here and as functional as I am because I didn't accept this. I mean, if I'd accepted this, well, I wouldn't even be here. I've had a number of doctors, they don't say it. None of them are, brave enough to come right out and say, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're alive." But I got that when I called the stroke center because the secretary answering the phone knew my name. And yes, I know South Dakota's really small, but we have an aging population. My guess is there's a lot of stroke victims here, but I don't think there's a lot of stroke victims who lost 70% of half their cerebellum. I think that's unusual.
Hmm.
I think that part of it, I didn't know that until until fairly recently, but I knew it was severe, and I knew the expectations of me from medical staff, et cetera, were very low. However, my family's expectations and my expectations of myself have always been very high. And I think that that may have been very helpful. I am not the kind of person who would tolerate being um, severely limited in my thoughts. I'm just not going to put up with that. I'm not going to put up with, I finished law school late. I wouldn't have put up with losing I spent almost 4 years doing this. I'm not going to put up losing all of that in one day. That's
Hmm.
just not going to happen. So I think that in some ways being extremely perfectionistic and driven has been helpful in that I just won't tolerate inadequate performance. I don't put up with that from me, and I don't put up with that from other people either. I expect everybody to do what they can. Having raised two developmentally disabled children, I won't put up with that for myself. But I mean, if they bring home straight C's, I'm ecstatic. I'm so happy for them. I mean, that's wonderful news. I expect people to do what they're capable of, including me.
Wow. So it sounds like I don't even know if you really had a turning point. It was just immediate in your head, like, I will get better from this every single day.
Absolutely. If I have to be here, I want to be as much me as I can be.
I love that.
Yep.
What do you feel like was the hardest part of rehab, and how did you push through those setbacks?
Oh my gosh. Hmm.
And you don't have
Uh,
to answer that if you don't want to.
no, I think they need to know everything. I think the hardest part of rehab, well, I have always been the main income provider for my family, which,
Yeah.
I mean, I was a healthy 51-year-old. It never crossed our minds how terrible that was, how dangerous that was. Um, After the stroke, obviously, I didn't work. Basically, I didn't work that year at all. And I
Hmm.
started doing a little bit of work in 2023, the next year, and I ended up doing quite a little bit of court appointed stuff in 2024. On November 15th of 2024, the head judge of our circuit called me into the court, and of course I went. I had no idea what it was about, but what it actually was that she and another judge were there to tell me that they were really concerned that I wasn't doing well enough, and they were going to take away my county board of mental illness positions and
Oh,
stop appointing me to court appointed attorney staff, which was really upsetting. Um, at the same time, the person with whom I had done immigration law was doing less and less immigration law. And then after my stroke, she basically didn't do any because that was primarily my position that I would do that. Um, and without me there, she couldn't really do it. And immigration law takes a long time at this point, but she had no knowledge if I would ever come back. So I was in a position of, trying to support my family with nothing, which is hard to do. Um, so they gave me some specific things they wanted me to do, and I'm actually deeply grateful for it a little bit. Um, I had a neurocognitive clinical test earlier in October of 2023, and it was very mixed result. Some of
mhm,
it I came out good, some of it I came out really bad, and some of the stuff I came out bad on were things that I had done reasonably well in the past, but now were lost. I
mhm.
can't remember the specifics. I think I sent it to you, but I do apologize for not remembering. But it wasn't great. But the court said that they needed to hear from a doctor, which makes sense, that I was rehabilitated. There's exactly one doctor in the whole state of South Dakota who does this kind of test, who takes Medicaid. She's 4.5 hours away.
Wow. So you had to
Um,
go.
and that's where I went.
Oh my gosh. How many times?
Pardon?
How many times did you have to go?
Just once. A forensic neurology test is long, but it's just one day.
Okay.
And we did the test. I'm actually really glad that I did, but that was my ultimate low point. I mean, losing all of that at once was really hard. And it's also been a lot of my identity. Um, I really like being able to help people in this area, and I feel like I've done some really useful things. So to have that all taken on Monday was tough and unprepared as well. But I am really glad that I did the test because that's the one, and you get to see the results were good. And also, that was the incident that inspired me to use constant therapy because, as we've discussed, there's nothing around here, but I needed something that would exercise my brain, and being separated from other attorneys made that harder. A lot of times, if you're an attorney in a friendly community like we have, other attorneys will bounce stuff off of you.
Hmm.
Just yesterday, I and an attorney, we met all day, and there was a terrible problem with one of our clients, but it's like a very tricky mental legal puzzle, and I find those kinds of things very stimulating. I didn't have that after this 15th incident, so I went with constant therapy in the hopes that it would help me with getting that part of my brain working.
Hmm.
And I do think it did. And then, there's the objective fingerprint. I needed to be able to prove to the judge that I was better. And that's what it enabled me to do. As you said, the neuropsychologist saw me on only one day. So she can't say I'm getting better. She has nothing to it's just the one day. I'm not going to get better in a day. But with constant therapy, it was very objective. Here is exactly what I'm getting better at. Here's how much better I am at it. And that's huge to somebody like me to have that concrete result, especially if you have vertigo that never goes away. It
Hmm.
just gives you something very, okay, my vertigo might not be any better, but I can see on constant therapy, my initial score was this, now it's this. So
Yeah.
that shows a distinct improvement.
Well, it's a
Um,
quantitative measure, and you don't have to drive 10 hours round trip.
right, but it's very
No.
quantitative, and it's very specific too. Um, Some of it was funny. Like I didn't have a lot of arithmetic scores, which is funny because I remember math like percentages right from the beginning. Um, but it was just so specific and like you said, objective. It's not. I've had a lot of people telling me, "Oh, you're fine" from the beginning, and every time I'm like, "You don't know that.
Yeah.
You haven't been around people with a stroke. You have no idea what's wrong with me, if it's okay, or if it'll ever get better. You can't know." And this thing, because it doesn't know me, it doesn't care about me, it's just looking at the numbers. And
Mhm.
that's just, to me, that's really reassuring. It's not saying something to try to make me feel better. It's just measuring what is.
So you had an enormous amount of, I think, guilt after your stroke because you're trying to care for your kids and your husband, and you're worried about your clients and
Yeah, I have
immigration
I have
law.
only one kid at home, but yeah, I feel an enormous amount of guilt for him because, I mean, can you imagine having your mother almost die when you're 14 years old? And totally unexpected too.
I think it's important to touch on that because it's not something that's talked about enough. I think
Uh-huh.
because we focus a lot on like treatment and getting you as rehabilitated to the best of our ability, but I
Right.
don't think we touch enough on kind of that emotional burden that comes from having a stroke because a lot of patients do. They struggle with anxiety or anger or depression, and those
Mhm.
undealt with emotions make rehab that much harder.
I have been profoundly depressed since this happened. I don't know if I would be as depressed if we weren't in such terrible trouble financially,
Mhm.
but we are. So that's terrifying. We're still in our home after 3.5 years, which I don't even know how that, well, it's probably due to the generosity of my parents, but I mean, that's like it. And it's disturbing.
So there's like so many things that hit you after you have a stroke, the
Yep.
financial, the career, the guilt. So it's so but despite all of that, and maybe because of all of that, right? Because there's one of two decisions to make. One is I'm giving up, and you said, no, I'm not. I'm going to push. And so then how did you find constant therapy?
Wow. That's an excellent question, and I wish I could remember. I probably found it online looking for stuff because again, I've had to. It's ironic because I'll often meet, deal with law clients who are like trying to correct me about the law, and I'm like, "Do you talk to Dr. Google? I'll just go to law school, and get a
Yeah.
license." I'm sure you get that too, right, Danielle?
Yeah,
Um,
I used to, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So,
But we're about to get Dr. AI. That's going to be the new wave, not just
right.
Dr. Google. Yeah.
Well, um, I probably found it through there. But when I looked at it, I liked the idea of the cognitive exercises. The cognitive was a big thing for me.
Did you just so like did you just go on a Google and you just like what did you even like what were you looking for on Google? Or what were you like what made you
I
decide?
wish I could tell you better than that. I probably was looking for cognitive therapy. I may have been looking for occupational therapy. There's very little around here to choose from. I think my guess is that I would have been looking for some kind of therapy that I could do myself without a therapist doing it for me. Because not only do we have almost nobody in state, but if you're from out of state and you want to work with somebody here, like if I was your patient rather than an interview, you would have to pay for a special license for
Yeah.
South Dakota.